Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss what is attribute directive. So let's check the definition. So an attribute directive changes the appearance or behavior of a DOM element. So what is an attribute? Whenever we are trying to change the attribute of a DOM element, then we require a attribute directive. So what are the attributes of a DOM element? It's like changing the color, the font, or any kind of styling related attributes. When we are going to change, there we want to have an attribute directive. So there are two kinds of directives which are present. One is that the directives which are provided to you from Angular itself, and the other directive is that the directive which can be made custom. So in this tutorial, we are going to see both the inbuilt directives as well as the custom directives. So there are few inbuilt directives like NgClass, NgStyle, and NgModel. So what NgClass does is that it adds and removes set of CSS. So what is CSS meant for? CSS is meant for styling of your DOM. So NgClass is something which is going to add or remove a set of CSS class from your DOM. So it's just changing the DOM appearance and behavior. That's why it is an attribute directive. Similarly, when we are trying to change the style of a DOM, then we use NgStyle directive. So it also what it does, it adds or remove a set of HTML styles. And there is a third one, which is also an attribute directive, which is NgModel. What is NgModel? It adds two-way data binding between your HTML form and an element. So if anyone asks you what is an attribute directive is a directive which changes the appearance or behavior of a DOM element. There are two kinds of directives. One is the directive which is provided to you from Angular, and the other one is the custom directive. The already inbuilt directive which has been provided to you from Angular are NgClass directive, NgStyle directive, and NgModel directive. What do NgClass do? It adds or remove a set of CSS classes. NgStyle is the one which adds and remove a set of HTML styles. And NgModel is used for adding two-way data binding to HTML form element. Is that clear? Now let's go one by one and explore more in detail what NgClass does. So as I already told you that it's for addition or removal of classes within a DOM element. So there is something again called what? Say that you are having an HTML file. There might be that in certain scenarios there are 4, 5, 6 classes available with you, and based on certain scenarios you need to apply certain classes to your DOM element or to your HTML. So in those scenarios, whenever you are going to handle or whenever you are going to perform operation on 2, 3, 4, 5 or more CSS classes based on conditional statements, such condition you should go ahead with NgClass. But there is something called style binding also, or a class binding. Class binding you should use when you are only dealing with one class. Means you are having only a single class, and based on any scenario, either you need to implement that class or you don't need to implement that class. So what is the difference between the class binding and the NgClass? Class binding is only used for single class, while NgClass is used when you are having multiple number of classes and when you need to apply certain class based on certain condition. In that scenario, you need to use NgClass. It's an inbuilt Angular directive. Similarly, if we go for NgStyle, So NgStyle is mostly used for inline CSS. When you are having multiple inline CSS with you, and when you want to apply it into a DOM element, it might be a static one or a conditional one. You should go ahead with NgStyle. Similarly, there is a style binding. Style binding, when you need to use style binding, you need to use when you are only having one. Remember, only one style when you are going to you are going to put to your DOM element based on condition or static, you need to use style binding. And there, when there are multiple of styles, inline styles, when you want to put it into a DOM, may it be a dynamic or a static one, you need to use the NgStyle. So, and the third one, or the third attribute directive is NgModel. NgModel, the main purpose of NgModel is for two-way binding. It allows the data to be binded between your HTML page and the element. Whenever you make changes in your HTML page, that data gets reflected into your model, and when you change model, the same data gets reflected into your HTML. NgModel, the main thing which you need to remember. So for using NgModel, you need to have forms module imported in your ngappmodule.ts file in Angular. Remember this, the first step for using NgModel is to have forms module present in your appmodule.ts file. Now, there are some more in-depth knowledge about NgModel we are going to see. NgModel directive only work with a element supported by controller value accessor. So this is a interface. Control value accessor is an interface which creates a custom form control directive which integrates with your Angular forms. So how are you able to use NgModel with forms? The only reason is that the forms module, which is provided from Angular, internally implements control value accessor interface. So this, the main purpose of this interface is to create a custom form control directives. So a custom form control directive is getting created internally, and that is the reason that now you are able to use NgModel inside your forms. If you don't import your forms module, then you will get an error while trying to use NgModel. And NgModel, mostly this bracket which you are seeing is called banana in a box. So here what is happening? Here you are having the outer one, or the outer bracket which you are seeing is for binding the control from your controller or component to your HTML page, while the internal one, the internal bracket is called event binding, and the external one is called property binding. So property means any property which is there in your component can be binded to your HTML, while the internal bracket which you are seeing is called event binding. Any event that is going to pass from your HTML page to your component page can be binded. So both are two different forms. Both if internally or if used only with one thing or only one bracket when you are using, it's called one-way binding. Means either you are binding your HTML form to your component or your component to your HTML. So this, and when you combine these two brackets together, it is called banana in a box or two-way binding. So now it's time for little hands-on, and let's check how to, what all we have read, what we have read through. We have gone through our attribute directive. So now what we are going to see, we are going to just create and check how it works. So for this, what you need to do is, first step is to go and create a attribute component. So how we create a component? We create a component using ng generate component and component name. So attribute is the name of the component which I have created. So as soon as you write ng generate component, a component gets created inside your app folder. Now, what all files you get here? You get HTML, CSS, spec, and TS file. So now I'm just going to show you first the class and then the style one. So my server is up and running. I go to my HTML file, and what I did first thing, what I did, I created a div. Inside that div, what I did, I just created my button class. In button, what I did, I just did a ng class. So for what we use ng class? We use ng class when we are having multiple classes which we need to apply either dynamically or it is a static one. So here we get a test is my name of first class, test one is the name of second CSS class, and test two is my name of the third CSS class. So if I go to my CSS file, I see test is my first, test one is my second, test two is my third, and test three is my fourth. So where have I used test three? I told that if you are only going to use one class based on the condition based or static, you should use class binding. So NgClass I have used when I was having multiple classes, and class binding I have used when only I am having one class. What I did, I wrote a NgClass with multiple class. This first one will be the name of the class and the variable. Name of the class and the variable, name of the class and the variable. So the name of my button is class. Now I also created a checkbox, and based on the toggling effect of that checkbox, I'm just going to make my variables change so that I can have multiple CSS working into the picture. So now what I did, I went to my component.ts file, and I have created my variables here. So if you go to HTML file, you can say my variable 1, 2, 3 is already there. So if I go to TS file, I created my variable 1, 2, 3, and 4, and all are my Boolean variables. So as soon as this component gets initialized, I go to my ng on init, and I provide a default value to all my variables. So if I only kept my first variable as true, rest all are false. And whenever that checkbox is clicked, it goes to the toggle function. And what toggle function does is change the value of my variable 1 value to false. My variable 2 will become true as it was false, and my variable 4 will become true as it was false. So it's just changing the value, what I'm doing. And this value, what it is going to affect. So initially my variable 1 is true. That's my test class will get applied. So what is the value of test class? Test class is red. So by default, the button will be red. But when you toggle it, what toggling is going to do? Toggling is going to make my my variable 1 as false and my variable 2 as true. So what is the variable 2? Its test 1 will get applied. What is the value of test 1? Test 1 is blue. So my change will be from red to blue. Similarly, I have also applied class binding here. So class binding, it's doing, it's class test 3 is getting applied on the toggle of the button, because initially my variable 4 is false, and when you toggle it, it becomes true. So you can see it. By default, it's false, and when you toggle, it becomes true. So now when I go to my running instance, for now what I'll do, I'll just hide this code, because and then I'll show you the style binding as well. I'll just cut this piece out, and this is my class binding. So if I go to my HTML file, I go to my attribute directive. So by default, my color of the button is red, as I told, because first one was activated. Now when I toggle, this button should change to blue. It got changed to blue. And there is this class binding button also got changed to yellow. Why yellow? Because I have put my test 3 as yellow. So why test 3 got applied to it? Because my variable 4 becomes true, as initially it was false, and as soon as the toggling happened, it made it true. Now again toggling happens, it gets to a initial state. So what it is happening? The classes are getting applied and is getting removed. So this is my class directive. So now similarly what we can do is that we can do the similar thing for the, I'll just remove this custom for now. And what I have done, how I have created a NgStyle one. So the similar, likewise, I have taken the similar bunch of code and I have just removed the NgClass with NgStyle. And now here what we were doing, we were doing the taking the CSS class when to apply. Here we are going to put the styles which I want to put. I want to have a background color, my font weight, my font size. These all properties, whichever inline property you want to apply, it needs to be the first parameter. And my variable 1 and 2 and 3, those are similar to what I used previously. If my variable 1 is true, it means it's going to take the value as pink, else it's going to be black. Similarly, italic, normal, 24, 12. These are my styles. And similarly for style binding, what I did, in spite of class, I took the style and background color. It's dependent on variable 4. If it's true, it's going to be yellow, else it's going to be red. So if I save it and go, by default, see, this one is pink because initially it's going to be the true value which we have set. Now if I toggle, it becomes black. Why it becomes black? Because our condition was, if my variable was true initially, so it was getting pink, and as soon as we toggle, it becomes black. Again, if I toggle, it becomes pink. So now you will be thinking why both are working together, because we have not written a separate function for that, because we are using the similar variable, my variable here. That's why both toggling is affecting everything, because true and false, what it is returning, is used for the style as well. So this is very simple example for making you understand the style and the class directives. So what we did, we just created a component in HTML. We took a DOM element, and there we wrote NgStyle or class, whichever class which you want to put, or whichever inline CSS you want to put. You create variables, and based on that, whatever the condition is there, either you want to put this class if it's true or false, or if you want to have your inline variable, my background should be pink or black, or this is a ternary operator. So if you want to have your if else condition written inside your HTML page, you can go ahead with the ternary operator. So now there is one more thing left. That is the custom directive. So for creating custom directive, what you need to do is that you first need to go and create ng generate directive name. So what I written ng generate directive. Name of my directive is custom attribute directive. So as soon as you write that, a directive gets created for you. So when you open this directive, you can see that we have imported directive and element reference from Angular core. So this is a decorator which marks this normal class as a directive class. So name of my selector will be here. Class is normal. So what I did, in constructor, I take the element reference from here, and what I'm taking, whichever element it is getting applied. This custom can be applied to a div, to a button, to any of the DOM element. So I'm just taking that element out from here. I'm just taking the style from that, and I'm changing the background to yellow color. Now how to use it? I just need to put this selector name to the name where I've used here div. It can be a span, it can be a button, it can be anything. So I just took from here, I took a div, which is a DOM element, and in that DOM element, I put my custom directive. So as soon as this DOM gets rendered, first the directive will be called, and directive will apply the background color to that particular DOM element. So here I have written, this is my custom tag, and what color is going to get applied here? It's going to be yellow. So let's check here. So now this is my custom element and it's applied to yellow. Now if I say it to be a blue and save it, now see it got changed to blue. So you can handle element reference from the TS file also or from a directive also. Here I've changed background. You can go ahead and play around with your whole DOM element as you were doing in your NgStyle and NgClass. Similarly way, you can play along with the element reference. What was the requirement for element reference? Because we need a reference from where we can extract the reference of that particular DOM element and then apply a styling or attribute to that DOM element. For example, here we were having a div. We took the reference of that div, and in that reference, we applied the style and the background to it and converted that played along with the attribute of that DOM. So this was all from this tutorial. We have covered the NgStyle, NgClass, and custom directives. So we have left NgModel for this one because it will make more sense as well to cover NgModel when we are covering the forms module. Thanks everyone. If you like the video, please hit like and please subscribe the video. And if you're having any comments or any questions, please write in the comment section and I'll be very happy to help you uh, to solve those doubts. Thanks everyone. Bye.